Good evening, dear viewers. We're live streaming from the Global Forum in Marktoberdorf. Welcome to the Fendt Spotlight Weeks. Over the next few weeks, we're going to cover a number of topics revolving around the world of modern agriculture. And we're going to bring it all live into your living room. Or perhaps you can watch it from somewhere else. Today we're going to talk about the new driver's workstation and Fendt One. And who better to explain this than an actual user? Thorsten, please come over here. Thorsten runs a farm in Franconia. Hi, Thorsten. Good to have you with us.
Hello, Christiane.
In the film, we've just seen the boy becomes a grown-up and wakes up on his Fendt One tractor. Did you feel like the boy, like you were coming home with the new operating system?
Yes, my feelings were very similar, particularly as a Fendt driver. The operation is really very simple and intuitive. You can get to know it without having to read thick manuals. In a nutshell, the work is really fun.
That's great to hear. To get a closer look, I visited Thorsten at his farm in Franconia. Let's take a look at that. Where are we now?
You have arrived in northern Middle Franconia, about 30 kilometers south of Würzburg. This is a classic traditional farming region, mainly associated with pig fattening or pig processing. We also farm cattle, but not many, because we don't have much grassland here. It is a classic arable farming location.
So what do you do on your farm now?
We farm about 250 hectares of arable land and a little extensive grassland. It starts here at the front with the grain silos. Then comes the pig fattening and the pig fattening barn. We have about 850 spaces there, which we recently converted to animal welfare. That's why we have reduced the numbers a little for the benefit of the animals. We also added a biogas system in 2001.
Okay. And what are your main crops?
About half of the area is grain, mainly winter wheat, of which we feed about 30% to the pigs and market the remaining 70% as grain for bread. And winter barley for the pigs. And the other half is sugar beet and silage maize for the biogas plant. The sugar beet goes to the sugar factory in Oxenfurt for regional sugar.
You're quite digitally savvy. What does that mean for your farm?
It started with the first land use register about 20 years ago. At the time, it was mainly used for documenting crop protection records and fertilizer records. What is also required is a bit of an economic comparison between the individual fields, that is, between the measures. However, it has now gone more in the direction of site-specific management. That is, I would like to make specific savings on farm materials, fertilizers, and crop protection products.
And what does it look like in practice? What do you need for that?
It usually starts with harvest maps, either from harvesting machines, combine harvesters, maize choppers, or with notional harvest maps. These are then known as biomass potential maps.
Where do these biomass potential maps come from?
You can buy them from service providers. I have an example here on which you can see the different colors. These are different zone maps of the fields. For example, here is a field with different yield zones. The green zone is where the yield potential is highest, and the red zones are where the yield potential is lowest. This means that I assume that over the long-term average, on the basis of which the images were created, using satellite data, the annual yield is highest in the green areas.
Okay.
Conversely, for me, this means that the potential is lowest in the red areas. Instead of applying fertilizer at a flat rate as I did in the past, I now specifically fertilize the area of the field with the highest potential, the most, and the zone with the lowest potential, the least.
How does it get onto the tractor? You set it up on this PC, right?
Exactly. A certain amount of preparation is required. I create the maps on the PC, on the laptop, and they are then transferred to the vehicles wirelessly. The transfer is relatively simple, and I'd say that the preparatory work for the map display takes about 2 minutes per field.
And all this without a USB stick and long transmission distances.
That is an important point. If changes are needed because of errors on the map, which does happen, you can react very quickly and create a new map and then transmit back to the tractor wirelessly. And then you get going or continue.
So the maps are one thing, but how does Fendt One help you to process these maps?
Fendt One helps me in that we often work with 2 application maps at the same time on one field. In other words, one application map processes fertilizer, and the other processes another product. And that's where Fendt One is beneficial because of its multi-boom capability. I can send both assignment maps with one order and do not need a second transmission route. That is, a second terminal. It can all be done in one go.
You make it look really easy, Thorsten. Thanks for your insights. We'll see each other again later.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Easy to use and prepared for any challenge. That's what Fendt One promises to do. But I'd like to find out whether this really is the case. To check this out, I've invited my colleagues Florian Langenbuch and Jochen Riexinger. Glad to see you both.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Hey.
Hi. Florian thinks that technology is the key to sustainable agriculture. As a smart farming manager, he brings digital solutions closer to the customers. In other words, he's on the technology team. Jochen, on the other hand, is a sales engineer for tractors, whose main concern is for customers to start using the tractor quickly and therefore easily integrate it into the everyday running of the farm. He's on the easy-to-use team. Florian, explain to me what you have brought with you today.
Here we have the Fendt 724 Profi Plus, the top model in the 700 Vario range, together with an Amazon Isobus seed drill.
And what's special about Fendt One as far as you're concerned?
Fendt One fulfills all of the smart farming tasks which will be crucial in the future. From Fendt Guide to section control, variable rate control, then to multi-boom, section control, rate per section, and the automatic turning process on the headland.
Multi-boom, variable rate control. To be honest, my head's already spinning somewhat, so now I'll go over to Jochen, who'll introduce me to his team.
Yes, here we have the Fendt 718 Power Plus in the middle, then the Fendt Slicer front mower at the front, and the Fendt Tygo loader wagon at the rear.
And what's special about Fendt One as far as you're concerned?
The highlight of Fendt One is that anyone can simply drive it. It drives like any other Vario, and above all, with the simple and intuitive operation of Fendt One.
Right, that's enough chatting for now, so please get on to your tractors. And then let's have a look at it there. After all, any manufacturer can claim that a system is intuitive and easy to use, but I'd like to have a look at it now for myself. Jochen, show me how your tractor works.
Yes, we are now sitting here in the Fendt One driver's workstation, with the Fendt One armrest to my right, with all of the tractor controls. At the front is the familiar Fendt One driving lever, with the familiar operating functions for headland management, then the hydraulic functions. The rotary wheel, which you can see here, is new on the Fendt One control lever. It is used to accelerate or reduce the speed of the tractor in active cruise control. Here we have the new 3L joystick. This acts as a cross-shift lever, which is particularly beneficial when driving the front loader. We can easily reverse the tractor here at the push of a button. Then we have the new power lift control, which is intuitively arranged and operated using a toggle lever for the front power lift or rear power lift.
Okay, I now understand that the driving lever can do a lot of things, but what does the layout of the terminal look like?
The terminal fits exactly into our modern times and is operated like a smartphone. We have 6 control panels here, which can be individually assigned. If you want to change something, such as the rear power lift, you tap on the panel for the rear power lift and then conveniently adjust the traction position control here by touch.
Okay, let's move on to you, Florian, so that you don't get bored. You just said that the tractor is ready for all smart farming applications of the future. What do you actually mean by that?
Let's start here at the terminal. Here is our headlining terminal, which we can extend if necessary. On this terminal, we can now see our ISOBUS devices, our seed drill. At the same time, we also have our assignment management here. On the armrest terminal, we can now see our field boundary as well as the sowing application map, the ISOBUS auxiliary functions on the driving lever or the 3L joystick and section control. We can automatically control 144 sections here on the Fendt One driver's workstation, which can be divided into 5 yield units.
And do I need a separate ISOBUS joystick to operate the device?
We have also included the ISOBUS aux-in functionality here in the Fendt One driver workstation. We can assign up to 44 ISOBUS aux functions here. 12 here on the driving lever, 5 freely assignable buttons here, and 27 functions here on the 3L joystick. But since we don't always need 44 ISOBUS auxiliary functions, we can also combine standard tractor functions here, of course. This is a huge advantage in practice.
That sounds pretty impressive with the Profi Plus equipment. But Jochen, are you driving the Power Plus now? What does it look like there?
Of course, the Power Plus can also do ISOBUS. It's the classic Fendt loader wagon operation via the Fendt driving lever, and the terminal then acts as an ISOBUS terminal. We can see that here on the 12-inch terminal, the loader wagon is now operated via this 3L joystick. Quite simply, towards the front, lower the pickup, and towards the rear, raise the pickup. To open the load compartment cover, close to the left, to the right. And if you want to change the assignment, here with the joystick, simply tap on the function here on this operating screen. And then simply drag and drop it to where it's outlined in green.
Okay, I've just seen something down here that raises questions. Would you like to quickly come over here with me? I saw that your mower has no relief springs at all. Can you explain why that is?
Yes, so that's the way it is with the Fendt. We have an intelligent front power linkage with relief control, which means that we can take a certain amount of relief pressure away from the mower deck, and the key is the position sensor. The position sensor, which is installed here, detects the unevenness of the grassland, which means that the mower adapts itself perfectly to the terrain, and we therefore get perfect cut quality and perfect feed quality.
Wow, that's excellent. What else does your Power Plus variant have to offer?
Of course, we have also installed the Fendt Guide guidance system on the Power Plus.
Oh, stop. Guidance system. I'd like to jump right in because you now have a mower deck on it, plus the Tigo loader wagon. This really stands out for me.
Yes, the guidance system really is outstanding. Christiana, remember that if we had the 3-meter mower attached here, we no longer drive with just a 3-meter working width. If we look over here on the forum, there is a 5/16 with a butterfly mower from Fendt with a whooping 9-meter working width.
But don't you trust me to find the alignments there?
Yes, of course you can do it manually. But remember that if you sit on the tractor for 5, 6, or 8 hours, it is very tiring to drive without overlaps with such a large working width. And that's where Fendt Guide naturally provides the solution. We drive with a provision of 2 centimeters without an overlap, mowing the field. This makes us extremely efficient.
Okay, it now sounds as though I could just climb in and take over your job. Is that the case?
Yeah, of course. We can now create work profiles on the Fendt terminal. This means that each implement is stored at once. All settings are saved. The driver sits up, for example, selects the mowing work profile, and then all of the settings are loaded on the Fendt. The driver drives onto the field and just presses go, and the tractor does everything completely on its own.
You just spoke about the assignment of the driving lever and the terminal. It sounded like it was customized for you. What if I now have different preferences to you?
This isn't a problem at all. The driver can individually assign the armrest the way he or she wants to operate it, and it is then saved under his or her individual profile so that everyone can operate the tractor perfectly, very individually as they would like.
Let me come back to the Fendt Guide. Florian, what's it like to use?
All of the fields from the application program have been adapted so that I could import them into the Fendt Guide. Of course, it would also be possible to record the field manually here on the tractor. By means of the contour segments trackline type, we can use the steering system very effectively, also at the headland. And I would now like to show you how this works in the terminal. We click here on Add Trackline. Then we select Contour Segments mode. Since we have a boundary, we'll take Calculate Boundary. We then select the number of field sides, in our case 4. And then we have created our contour segment. We save this, move our segment by half of the working width, and then we start sewing. The big advantage, if we start here now and switch to this page, is that the system automatically changes the appropriate trackline segment, and I don't have to select anything. When we have seeded our headland, as we usually do when sowing maize, we decide on a segment to be used to finish the field. We then press the Fix button in the terminal here, and then we finish sowing the field.
Oh, seeding and fertilizing send a shiver down my spine because seed and fertilizer prices are higher than ever. Can Fendt One also help us to make any savings?
Yes, we have 2 central functions here in the terminal. One is section control, and the other is variable rate control. Here is a short explanation on the terminal as to how it is used or how it works. We start here with section control. We have the seed application unit, for which we can automatically control the sections here, and the fertilizer application unit. Here, too, we can automatically control the section widths. This functionality is called multi-boom. This means that we can already switch off automatically in areas which we have already sown or fertilized. The next functionality here would be variable rate control. How does it work? We have the seeding map here, that is, an application map that runs in the background, where we can practically vary the seeding intensity differently in the field. Why would we do that? Every field, or almost every field, can be heterogeneous, that is, have different yield potentials based on the soil. So we can decide, for example, I have a high yield potential. Then I increase my seeding rate. Or is it low yield potential? Then I reduce the sowing rate. The application map is still shown in the dashboard. where we can then also adjust the fertilizer quantity. Here, too, we can think about where I have a width earning potential, where I apply more, and where there is less earnings potential, where I will apply less. The key to the matter is that it is even possible to control a different application rate for each partial section width, provided it is supported by the attachment.
Wow, it sounds like you're really taking an individual approach to soil conditions. But why is it so important to work in accordance with requirements and in a way that conserves resources?
Yes, you already mentioned the high fertilizer prices, Christiane. We simply save money with this technology by reducing the amount of seed and, of course, fertilizer. We should also mention the plant cultivation aspects, of course, where we seed more or less depending on the soil, which means that the plant can then also develop better because of better stand area distribution and to generate more yield at the end of the day, of course.
It sounds like Fendt One is quite an asset in arable farming. But what about the quality of my work? Can improvements be made there as well? For example, does the tractor turn by itself?
Here we have the TI headland functionality, which enables us to turn once automatically at the headland. But we can also carry out steps in headland management automatically on the basis of the headland line. Not only can we do the normal turn, the normal pear shape, but we can also complete the turn in a K or Y shape. To show you how this works in practice, Christoph Baer, who tested this in the field last autumn, is now showing how it's done.
So now we can see that we've already worked a little bit of the field. We see that TI Auto is activated, the automatic turn is also active, next one is to the left. And we soon reach the headland. Here comes the headland line. And we also see in a second the K turn line. So if we cross the headland line, TI Auto is activating the teach-in sequence. So it's lifting up the implement, and now we are following the K turn line. And the only thing what I have to do is to change the direction now for reversing. That is done manually because of some safety reasons. And after some meter I can change into forward, and now we are directly in the next way line, which fits perfectly, so we do not have any unnecessary overlaps or any missing or unworked area in the beginning. So a perfect match of the way line here. And we are ready to go on.
Wow, that was a lot of information. Thank you, Jochen. And thank you, Florian. As you can see, Fendt One is ready for the future. Sophisticated technology does not forego the ease of use. Thorsten, how is it for you? Do you have a soft spot for technology, or do you focus on ease of use?
For us, both are very important. We need the ease of use for the temporary staff, but we also want to process complicated orders with assignment maps. And ideally, this should also fulfill the documentation requirements.
Great, Thorsten. That leads me straight to my next guest. René Wengelewski is a successful YouTuber and a big fan of modern agricultural technology. In his videos, he deals with digital systems and explains them in detail. René, how did your YouTube channel come about?
Well, I've always had this in mind. Someone has to upload some videos to YouTube where this is explained in a sensible way by the manufacturer itself or somebody else. There are beauty videos, makeup videos, tutorials, whatever. Why isn't there anything about, well, the Vario tractor where everything is explained in a sensible way? And then in principle, I took this moment as an opportunity, because my friends asked me if I could also pass on my knowledge and explain it to them. I thought, yes, this would be a good point to start recording a video, to try it out, to see how it goes down. And yes, it was well received, and so one thing led to another. Then I pursued this one little further.
What was your first contact with the new driver's workstation and with Fendt One?
Yes, last year we then also had the opportunity to try out the new or the completely new driver's workstation, the Fendt One operating concept, on the farm thanks to Fendt. And of course, once you get on it, you are initially a bit overwhelmed by all this variety and this new driver's workstation. In any case, the basic principle, the basic cabin and engine, transmission, and so on, were all the same as in the 7 Series, which I got there. But I'd say that once you saw all of these screens and so on inside, everything looked a bit bigger, which you have to get used to. And that was a lot to begin with, of course. But almost everyone says that at first. Once you've driven it for 2 or 3 days, you don't really want to swap it for the old driver's workstation. And of course, you had to fiddle your way around with the whole thing a bit more. But once you get used to it, to the display resolution, to the 6 screens instead of 4, and that you no longer have to hook up an external ISOBUS terminal or anything, then it's definitely very cool, and you get used to it very quickly.
And did your father-in-law also have the opportunity to use the Fendt One tractor?
Yes, exactly. I've put both my father-in-law and my now 94-year-old grandma on the new driver's workstation. And that's how it was with my father-in-law, who was, of course, also, flabbergasted at first when he sat down. But in principle, he was able to drive the thing within a few minutes because the operation is completely the same. So the basic driving is, if you like, not at all that different from the old driver's workstation. But when it comes to these details, I would say that setting up and starting section control, variable rate control, and assignments and so on in a sensible way requires a bit of help in the first place, of course. Because we got straight into laying maize and worked through everything with maps and so on. And of course, I wanted to have the assignments back on the computer afterwards, so I activated everything once. But apart from that, the driving and so on went super fast. And he was also very impressed with that, especially the new rotary wheel on the joystick, which I wouldn't have expected. I've always discussed this in videos on frequent occasions as to whether it makes sense and whether it's necessary. But afterwards, when you know that something like this exists, you miss it on your tractor. And these are things that we often still discuss. And yes, even my grandmother, she sat up there. For her, comfort was the main issue, of course. Of course, she was also flabbergasted. She still remembers driving with the horse and cart. She said it was unbelievable that there was such a great seat and air conditioning, that everything is closed and so on. And even if I take them with me or something on the tractor, they don't notice it from the outside. It's amazing how much technology and how much comfort is now built into such tractors.
What made you really appreciate the Fendt One tractor at work?
I've had the new tractor for almost exactly a year, or it will be a year next month. And we were able to use it to prepare for our maize sowing. In other words, normal tillage. In that case, a lot of pre-cultivation and then preparation specifically for maize. Federstadt kindly provided me with a tempo, which was capable of switching between individual sections and varying the amount of fertilizer and seed applied per section. And with the new driver's workstation, everything is possible. There you can switch up to 144 sections, load in several maps, and so on and so forth. And to control several booms with the application maps. And during the course of this, I was able to try out everything for myself, that is, the Fendt innovations which our machine could not provide. And so I had the opportunity to record the videos with a basic focus on maize in order to be able to try out all these innovations of the driver's workstation.
What do you still want to see from Fendt One? What would you write in the to-do booklet for our engineers?
In general, I have to say that with the new driver's workstation, with the new operating concept, the Fendt engineers have definitely set a benchmark. Or rather, they have really knocked one out of the park. I really have to say. And last year, unfortunately, I still had one of the first machines which did not have all of the features. Not everything was available. But in general, I have to say that so many cool things have been added. The mere fact that these 27 functions can be controlled on the 3L joystick, ISOBUS functions, and so on and so forth, there's so many things that have come together. And in general, I couldn't really say what I would definitely like to see improved. Of course, there are small things like a second cup holder or something like that in terms of comfort. Of course, the engineers can come by and we have another chat around a machine.
What do you particularly like about working with Fendt One?
So what I definitely liked about the new driver's workstation were the new screens, like the new 10-inch dashboard behind the steering wheel, and the 12-inch terminals on the right side in the cabin. So basically, I had the big package, I'll say with the 12-inch terminal, up out of the roof hatch. And of course, there's the comfort of having such a high-resolution display compared to the old driver's workstation. We have a bigger terminal, from 10.4 to 12 inches. We now have 6 screens instead of 4, and at first you don't think it's such a big difference, but once you're working with it, it's simply clearer. Once you get the hang of it, you can actually operate it in a better way. And you have a better overview. Like I said, you don't have a separate ISOBUS terminal either, which you have to attach to a screen to somewhere, which then somehow dangles down or something. You can also run the ISOBUS screen quite normally in the 12-inch terminal in a roof hatch, for example, and have a good view. And yeah, what else did I like? Definitely the fact that a separate button for the guidance system has been added to the joystick, and the aforementioned rotary wheel on the joystick was also great. Otherwise, yeah.
And what are the obstacles for farmers with regard to purchasing this machine?
I think the obstacle to buying a Fendt One tractor is actually always the same point, or the same 2 points. Firstly, the purchase price, but that can also be partly justified by all these new features and so on. And the second thing is, I think that many people just see the pictures and so on of this driver's workstation and think, dude, can I still learn the ropes there? Because you know yourself that when a new social media channel is open, something like Snapchat, TikTok, whatever, then we see as over 25s or 30-year-olds already have certain problems in learning the ropes. And you think, aren't Instagram and Facebook already enough for me? And it's the same with these operating concepts. Of course, we were faced with the same issue 10 years ago when, let's say, we changed from a very old driver's workstation to the current ones. And we're at the same point now. People just have to sit on it and try it out and see how many things are actually the same. And yes, how many things actually make life easier. And I don't think there are these 2 obstacles. One is the price issue, and the other is that people think, do I really need this? There's a lot to consider, but accordingly, there's also the power version, or something like that, the completely slimmed down versions, and then the high-end variants. And of course, I can also clearly understand Fendt, or rather AGCO, that they have to perform a very delicate balancing act, somewhere between the, let's say, classic contractor who simply wants to plow with his tractor, which perhaps only needs 2 control units and nothing else, and then the high-end farmer who flies over his fields every week with a drone to create biomass maps and wants to link it all together somehow. And of course, it's another thing to manage the balancing act, but I think they have done a very good job with this driver's workstation.
Yeah, and what advice would you give to your colleagues if they're considering buying a Fendt One tractor?
When my professional colleagues ask me about the Fendt One workstation and what I could recommend, I always say, by all means, try it out. And if I ever have it out on the farm again, then come around and sit in it. Because you can always explain a lot, but when you actually sit in it yourself and try it out, that's something else altogether. And I also have a video about it where I put one of my best buddies, Konstantin, in the driver's workstation and basically film his first reaction to this new driver's workstation. And that was actually entirely positive. And really, people can't get the grin off their faces once they've sat in it. And when they do get into their old driver's workstation, they actually miss some of the functions. Even if it's only little things like the separate button for the guidance system or for activating the guidance system. And as I said, I would recommend to everyone to get a feel for it themselves, ideally to test a machine for a short period of time, to try it out on their own farm, find out which controls you might need or not need at all, or which configuration, in order to get a better picture for yourself. And because so much is no different from the old tractor with regard to normal driving.
Yes, that's a great tip, René. Thank you very much. Thorsten, did you know René before?
Yes, I know him from his YouTube videos. I really like to watch them, particularly the software updates. That is just more fun than studying a new instruction manual again.
We saw you on a farm before. After all the input, now let's look at the next part of the farm visit. Thorsten, you were just in the field now. What is this nice attachment?
Yes, this is an N sensor, a so-called nitrogen sensor. It has 4 sensors distributed over the boom and scans the crop in the field virtually online. It transmits this so-called NDVI value. This is a biomass indicator to the software from the tractor, and the tractor tells the spreader where to spread more or less in the field.
In other words, specifically adapted to the plants, right?
Right. It's divided into 2 halves, left and right, and then tells the spreader, at this point, for example, the plant density is too thin. Please fertilize more here. Or here it is already thick enough. Please fertilize less. And the spreader can then divide it into the left and right working widths. And that already makes it very specific. If we have a working width of 30 meters, the spreader operates 15 meters to the left and 15 meters to the right and can change the values individually.
Okay. And is it a rule that you have to do it that way? Or do you do it because you like it?
There's no rule, although almost everything has been regulated in agriculture. No, of course, I do it with the aim of saving farming supplies, in this case fertilizer, to feed the plants as much as possible according to their needs, but also to save on fertilizer.
And can you say approximately how much you save there?
We've been using the N sensor for 3 years now. We've now reduced our fertilizer input by about 10 to 15%, without any noticeable loss of yield.
So you now use the N seeker mainly for sowing. Is there any other application area where you use it?
Exactly. We use it for fertilization. It's actually always attached whenever we're fertilizing because it's very easy to use. I can hitch it up and drive off straight away. I don't need pre-planning. I can tell the software on the tractor so and so much NDVI biomass means so and so many kilograms of fertilizer, which means that I don't need maps. I can create application maps in the office. I can hitch up the machine and start immediately. This is very interesting, especially when it comes to fertilizer application. When the weather conditions are such that, for example, rain is expected, then as a farmer you just want to drive off. Another application is in crop protection, especially in the use of growth regulators. It's also worked very well there. This means that we have the end seeker at the front that determines the biomass and the crop protection sprayer at the back, and the end sensor that tells the sprayer, here's a lot of crop, more growth regulator here please, here's not so much crop, less growth regulator here please. And in this way we also try to save on crop protection products. We also use it for fungicides. However, here they are only talking about savings potential of somewhere between 10 and 15%.
And the communication between the end seeker and the fertilizer spreader, how does that work?
This runs via the tractor terminal. So we have 2 ESOBUS devices here. The end seeker is an ESOBUS subscriber, and the fertilizer spreader is an ESOBUS subscriber. This means that we now need a tractor that can handle 2 ESOBUS devices at the same time.
Okay, and the 720 can do that, can't it?
Fendt One can do that. And previously we used the system with the Gen 4 Fendt. It was relatively demanding because we needed an additional terminal, because you have to operate 2 devices, so to speak. 2 ESOBUS units, 2 section control, 2 variable rate control, and it was very difficult. Now with the Fendt One system on the 720, it's much easier because it can do it on board, and it's equipped to operate both devices at the same time.
You also drive it as a contractor. Does Fendt One also help you there, or can you only use it on your land?
No, the Fendt One system is a great help, especially in the wage sector. We do a lot of partial area-specific maize sowing with partial area-specific fertilization, which means that we again have 2 ESOBUS participants on one tractor in order, on the one hand, to control the sowing intensity of the maize seeder using an application map and fertilize using a fertilizer map at the same time. And this is where the Fendt One really comes into its own, because it can operate both devices with section control, variable rate control, and application maps. And at the same time, there's another help. In the wage sector, there are often many fields to deal with, since I'm only there every 2 or 3 years. However, I can plan all of the assignments neatly on the PC beforehand. I can record the fields and the employees, or myself. Then I know exactly the layout of the field. Maybe we even still have the guided steering track, which is really a great help.
And what about the bookkeeping? Does it help you there too?
Exactly. The data is then read back, off-board, so to speak, into the PC. And then I can usually produce a proper invoice a few weeks later when I have time, according to working hours, diesel costs, area covered, and everything else that goes into it.
You also said that employees drive for you. What did they think about the introduction of Fendt One?
The changeover was very easy in our case, since we already have a Fendt 828 Gen 4. This means that the operating structure has remained relatively similar. Only the menu depth is now more one-dimensional. That means I no longer have 3, 4, or 5 submenus, but usually move between 1 or 2 menus and can move back and forth a lot, similarly to a smartphone. Intuitive operation, that actually made it very easy for the staff, and the feedback was actually positive across the board. At first they're shocked when they sit in it and see 3 terminals, 3 screens, a lot of buttons, many more buttons than before, but after a relatively short time the feedback was actually, wow, this is really easy to use.
Yep, that was really interesting. Thorsten, thank you for your time. What's next for you on the farm now?
We'll finish the fertilization and then continue with the precision sowing of sugar beet and maize. Hopefully, we will use the Fendt One intensively again and enjoy the time in the seat.
Great. Thank you, Thorsten, for the insights on your farm. All that remains is for me to wish you good luck for the rest of the season. Thanks for your time and for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Today we have seen that the demands of agriculture are constantly on the increase and will always remain high. Fendt provides solutions for this and will continue to be your reliable partner in the future. Thank you for tuning in. Keep an open mind about digital transformation. Goodbye.
Farming is not an easy job. It's not just another job that you quit when something doesn't go the way you want. And there are some challenges right now. The weather is becoming more extreme, and thus the harvest windows are shorter. The distance to the consumers is getting bigger. Legal requirements affect our day-to-day work. When our job is already complex enough, what we need are solutions that make our lives easier. Solutions that secure our future. But how can someone without a connection to agriculture understand this?
We understand. Because we know your job. Because we understand agriculture. And we have proven many times that you can count on us. That we make your daily work easier with innovations. Even if there were skeptics at the beginning, in the end, we have convinced everyone. Farming doesn't just require muscle power or efficient high-performance machines, but thinking along with you from start to finish. And that starts with planning and organization. That's why we're combining office and field. Fendt One brings offboard and onboard together in one system, intuitively and above all, simply. In short, we're creating free space for you. Free space for the actual work. Free space for decisions. Free space for the essentials. Because at the end of the day, it is you on whom she can build her future, just as generations before you have built on you. Farming is not an easy task, but one thing is simple: Fendt One.